Welcome back. Welcome back as always. My name is Chesubire, and this is the Mother of Sons series. Mother of Sons because I have a very, very keen interest in young men to help them stabilize and become the best they can be as they navigate life. In the last episode, I was talking about what I call the disconnect. And I shared how we systematically train our daughters to do household chores, to think through things, but we systematically do nothing for our sons. So somebody challenged me on the thought recently, and so I think I need to put some context to it. The simple things we give the girls to do in the house give them critical skills that they can use later on in life. But many of us have our sons just playing outside. So there's the whole argument that outside they learn teamwork, which is fine. That's one thing they learn. But what else do they learn? Very many of our sons will come face to face with young ladies who have skills they don't have, and the only thing that they will be better at them is the fist. Let me explain. So my son turns 20 whenever he does. He's not. In real life, he's not. But let's say I've got a 20-year-old son who meets a girl who asks him, what's your plan for the future? How much have you saved? When do you want your first car buy? So he's on to buy a car, and she asks him, where are you going to get the money from? I'll get a job. Where's the job? All right. And he's like, maswali mingi, too many questions, leave me alone. What that shows is that she has critical skills of taking down the project into bite-sized pieces. He does overarching. Now, very many men have told me that's how a man works. But if a man is supposed to raise another man, can't he be able to break it down for him? And then in the marketplace, we have a lot of young men who have no drive, who cannot pivot, cannot think through issues. They get into jobs and they just stay for the sake of the money. And the only thing they're thinking about is money. Yet there are other skills that if they had, they could leverage. As I said earlier, it is not always universal, but a large majority of our young men are unskilled. I say this with confidence because I've had conversations across the spectrum. And the place I have found where they're the most challenging situations is the young men, especially from the informal settlements. The clear disadvantages our children have is absent fathers. Now, many of us define an absent father as a father who has walked away from his family. But there's another layer of absenteeism that we don't think about. So my husband has to go out and work to provide for the family. Because when you listen to how girls are raised, we are told the man should do the big bills, okay? So he needs to raise money for rent, for education, for the house we want to build as a family, the investments we want to do if you go by the traditional setup. So this man has to work very long hours. Added to that, he's probably moved the family out into a neighborhood that's a little bit cheaper, which means it is farther away from the city. So his commute is longer. So he has to leave earlier and come in later and still make the same amount of money. And because you want to add a holiday into the mix, if we're like the middle class, then he needs to find other deals he can do that will top up his income. Add to that the component of he wants to spend time with his boys. So depending on the kind of person he is, he could leave work and go for a drink. After all, around drinks is where deals are discussed. So as he is trying to put his family in the place he believes they should be, he becomes an absent father. Understood? Okay. The second disadvantage our children have is overbearing mothers. I'm a mother, I know. Oh, he's too young, he cannot do. Oh, leave him alone. It was just a mistake. He's a baby, he doesn't understand. That's how we talk. Yet we have children who are deliberately being difficult. They know what they're doing. And I need us to understand something, mothers. From birth, children know how to manipulate us. They know. So let me tell you, when my son was 8 weeks and he was breastfeeding, he bit me and he burst out laughing. The first time I let it go. The second time he did it and he did the same thing. I was like, no, we're not having this discussion. So I took him off the breast and I put him to sleep. And he sulked and he whined. When you take a baby to bed and they start screaming just because you've put them down, they're testing your boundaries. They know that if I scream just at a certain level, mommy will come running thinking something is wrong with me. We get played. So we become over-caring, over-concerned. My mother used to tell me, crying is good for their lungs. It expands them. But when I was raising my son, I began to realize very subtle things. He knew when he was crying for the sake of crying. So I began to find the signs and ignore those ones, right? If as a mother, I continued to think he's just a baby, he doesn't understand, one day he'll be old enough, when will that one day come? That's what I call overbearing mothers. We protect our children so much, yet home should be the place where we expose them to the challenges of life. So overbearing in the sense that we cushion, we cover, we, in the thought of nurturing, overcompensate for the absence of their fathers. The third disadvantage we have is a demanding society. I had mentioned it in passing earlier, but girls are raised to know that the man should take care of the big bills. I met a young man one day and he was very stressed. It was a Sunday and he was walking around the neighborhood looking for work. I had just come from delivering a tray of eggs and I had made 100 shillings profit on the tray of eggs. So this young man walks up to me and he says, I need 1,800 shillings today or I'm kicked out of my house. So I asked him, what does your wife do? Nothing. I'm like, in this economy, your wife sits in the house and does nothing? And he explained how where he comes from, it's the man's responsibility to take care of all the bills. He's a casual laborer in a neighborhood where the number of projects at that time, building projects, was slowed because it was around the election period. So he didn't have half as much work as he needed to keep his family going. His wife still expected to eat meat every other day. Now, I don't eat meat every other day because when we do the family budget, we can't afford it. So I was explaining this to him and he was very shocked that I as a woman would actually be able to have this kind of conversation. Society has expectations it has established that have severely disadvantaged our sons. I'm not saying we should have no expectations, but we need to give our sons the skills to cover these things. So that brings me to the fourth point of why our sons are disadvantaged. They have no training. Okay, when girls are growing up and a cousin or an auntie comes with a baby, you will instantly, naturally teach your daughter how to hold a baby, how to feed a baby, and there'll be all this conversation around child rearing. When an auntie comes and she's pregnant, there will be all this conversation about pregnancy, what to do, what not to do, what to eat, and all that. Who is teaching our sons how to be a father, how to hold the baby? We are teaching them that it comes naturally for women. Motherhood is not natural. We learn it. We learn half in advance and the other half on the job. When you get a child, you discover that all the theory you learned is just that, theory. The realities of it is tested with your own child. But at least you have some theory to go along. Have you taught your son how to position himself? Have you taught your son to think. Young men, have you been taught how to analyze an opportunity to see whether it is the right one for you? Have you been taught what skills will help you get ahead? If you have, please hit me up in the comment section and tell me what you were taught. If you haven't, respond also and tell me what you haven't been taught. In reality, and I hope you now understand the crisis. The crisis is we are assuming that having exposed them to play and to opportunities, quote unquote opportunities, having exposed them to series and movies, that our sons will automatically know what it is to be a man. If he doesn't understand how to analyze an opportunity, how will he know which one is good for him? If he doesn't understand how to start small and grow big, how will he know how you got to where you got to? If as a man you have never sat down and taught your son, your nephew, your neighbor's son, the young man who works in your office, how to save, make money, think through things, please understand he is severely disadvantaged from any girl. Do you then wonder why, okay, some communities think it's okay, why men beat women? There are communities who culturally it's a sign of love. We're not going there. I don't agree with that, but I will not go there. There's a flip side that I will just mention and we can discuss later. There has been an increase in gender-based violence. There's been an increase in boyfriends killing girlfriends because the girls are asking for too much. Can I dare to make you think about one thing? I dare. The only place this young man is better than the young woman because she was trained systematically by the circle of women around her is the fist. She has financial planning, she has project management, she has all other skills she needs to survive. She can forecast, she can pivot. The one place where he is better than her is his fist. And because she has challenged how he thinks and he feels his manhood is challenged, he strikes. Let's be careful that our sons do not become that. See you in the next episode.